Welcome to G.I.Joe Chronicles, Outpost Edition.
I trust your mission was equally well executed.
I want a stone cold righteous attention.
Militarily speaking, it's only fair to say that Cobra Commander is a world-class buffoon.
Welcome to G.I.Joe Chronicles, Outpost Episode 12. I am Jim Meal, also known as Jim the Joe Junkie. Over the course of this podcast, we intend to chronologically discuss the toys, comics, cartoons, and many other aspects of G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, which is my favorite pop culture subject. Without getting too bogged down in the details, just my co-hosts and I having a conversation and reminiscing. Today we will be discussing 5 episodes of the Sunbow cartoon, and with me today, returning to talk about some classic G.I. Joe animation, is the quartermaster of the Outpost, my brother George Meal. Thanks for stopping by the Outpost again, George. How have you been?
Hey, Jim. Thanks. Glad to be back. I've been pretty good. Been busy doing what we do, finding the deals where we can find them, and doing a little prepping for a little vacation I got coming up. So I'm kind of focused on shoring up a few projects around. Nothing crazy as far as toy hunting, though. How about you?
Yeah, it has been hit and miss. I've been having to work a lot, so my weekends for yard sailing and stuff has been kind of limited. But I've been able to find a few deals here and there, mostly video game stuff. Crystal picked a couple things up for me yesterday while she was out.
Well, that's good. Most of my pickups lately have been video game stuff. A couple weeks ago, I picked up that one lot that was over 200 video games, and yesterday I picked up another 20. And then another 25 again today, mostly Xbox. I only had one sale all day yesterday I was telling myself, boy, I didn't see any video games or anything like that. And the very last sale I went to, and I picked up a Xbox and 20 games for, $40. So that was a win in my department.
Yeah, some days you think, I won't find anything. And then it just takes that one sale and your day's turned around.
That's for sure.
The only really special mission that are Joe related that I can think of is I had my first custom vehicle sell, one of my double turret HISS tanks sold on eBay. So I was pleasantly surprised, but at the same note, kind of sad to see my baby go. But the guy sent me some pictures and posted on Twitter what he did, and I am glad to say that it went into the right hands. It was pretty neat to see that.
I did see those pictures. That was he did right by your start, and he definitely hit a home run with what he did too.
Like I said, it was kind of sad to see it go, but that's why I made it, and time to make another one.
Well, the nice thing about those customs is, when you do make them, you love them, but if you sell them and move them on, they're going to somebody that appreciates it just as much, if not more than you do. So it's not like you're worried it's going to go somewhere and never be taken care of.
So let's dive right into our first segment we call Action Figures in Motion.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
Last cartoon episode, we covered 7 episodes of Season 1. They were 20 Questions, Greenhouse Effect, Haul Down the Heavens, The Synthoid Conspiracy 1 and 2, Phantom Brigade, and Lights, Camera, Cobra, where we discuss clones, stolen gas canisters, giant vegetables, melting polar ice caps, The Joes Go to Hollywood, and Phantoms. We covered a lot of stuff and a wide range of different styles of directing and action. This show, we will continue to discuss more of the regular cartoon episodes of Season 1. Most of these episodes are single stories that begin and end in one episode, with a few 2-part stories sprinkled in. Most of them have a fairly basic plot. Cobra attempts an evil scheme, and G.I. Joe stops him. We will begin by giving a synopsis of each episode and expressing our thoughts on the highs, lows, and what does. But here at the Outpost, we called what does Fatal Fluffies. We also want to thank half the battle for the episode information. So let's get started with the first one we will be discussing today. First one is Cobra's Candidate, written by Gordon Kent. In a crime-infested city, gang members tear down campaign posters, threaten voters, and disrupt the campaign rally of Robert Harper, the city's law and order candidate for mayor. At the request of the president, Colonel Sharp sends in a team of Joes to handle the situation. The Joes give chase to the teens at the rally leading the gang to summon the help of the Dreadnoks, who capture the male members of the team. Alerted to Cobra's involvement, Scarlet and Lady J follow Harper and find that he, not his opponent, is being supported by Cobra. Cobra is paying the gangs to cause chaos to create a sympathy vote for Harper. Scarlet and Lady J try to connect with the gang leaders and are introduced to Pilar, who refuses to believe their claims about Cobra. Joined by Wild Bill and Quick Kick, the two rescue the captive Joes. They learn from a captured Crimson Guard that Cobra plans to destroy a wharf at Harbor's next rally. The Joes arrive at the rally just as Cobra sets off the explosives, and Pilar's young brother is trapped inside a burning building. When the Dreadnoks refuse to let Pilar rescue her brother, the gangs turn on them, forcing them to retreat. Scarlet and Pilar enter the building and coming out with the boy, and Harper's connections to Cobra are made public as he runs for Cobra's fleeing boat. He is picked up by the Coast Guard and arrested, and loses the election in a landslide, having received only 2 votes from Tomax and Zema. So, George, what is a high, low, or fatal fluffy?
Well, I'm going to start off with a fatal fluffy that is probably yours, but I'm going to take it so that you can't, because I'm pretty sure it's on your list. And that was when they were fighting on the rooftop, and the Dreadnoks just happened to be up on the rooftop with their quads, and then they jumped from who knows how far that was, and they just happened to land right on a lower building. No problem. Stuck the landing 100%. I'm just like, really? Okay, I guess.
So, remind me, the quads were on the building, on the roof somehow, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, first of all, how'd they get up there?
Exactly.
Now, the Joes jumped pretty far, correct? Or was it the quads that jumped?
No, the quads jumped.
Okay.
The Joes climbed up the fire escape while they're chasing the gang members.
Gotcha.
It was just, I've watched this probably 3 times in the last week. I'm just like, come on. You wouldn't even want to jump, let alone try and fly a quad from one rooftop to another the distance they were going.
I wouldn't want to try to stick that landing.
No.
My first fatal, this one's kind of could be any of the 3. I find it somewhat hilarious that the only time the Dreadnoks seem even remotely like they have it all together is when they're around the teenagers. And around anybody else, they're not very smart or not very capable. That's the word I'm looking for, is capable. The only time they seem capable is when they're around the teenagers that don't know what they're doing anyway.
I think it's got something to do with their maturity level. The teenagers helped them not be so dumbed down, but they were superior as far as experience and life experience.
Yeah, it was kind of like, yeah, they act like they know what they're doing. Oh, wait a minute. They're around a bunch of teenagers, of course. You're right. They're on the same maturity level. What else you got?
I'm going to kind of back up because I kind of went out of sequence as far as the show goes. There was the part where the Mayor-elect, I can't remember what his name was, Harper was under all that rubble when Joe's showed up and started chasing the teens. And then they get done doing all the chasing and the girls go back and then they pull Harper out of the rubble. I'm like, so what? The cops and everybody just waited for the Joes to come back to pull him out of that rubble? Because you can't tell me it was within a matter of 3 seconds, where nobody showed up. I just thought that was really weird. I don't want to take another one here, but back on your Dreadnoks. Am I the only one that thinks that Buzzer looks like Dale Dribble from King of the Hill?
That comparison has been made before in memes or something I've seen before.
I knew I wasn't alone on that, but I just look at it, I go, that's a spit. Now, well, at least we know what he did when they retired. He wanted to be an exterminator.
My next one is, so you're telling me that Spirit, Zap, and Snake Eyes couldn't beat the Dreadnoks and the gang members in the hand-to-hand combat fighting?
That was actually because they were told when they were given the mission, they had to pull their punches. They couldn't go in full bore and just wreak havoc and whoop everybody down. Why they still pulled their punches with the Dreadnoks, I get it with the teenagers. That was their instruction, was to not go in there in full force.
I did not catch that. That explains one of my next points. So the Dreadnoks and Storm Shadow and the gang members all leave when they're underneath the city, right? And leave just the Crimson Guards keeping an eye on the Joes. Well, that's when the Joes escape because they don't have to pull their punches.
Yeah, so maybe the Joes were actually they were dumbing down the Dreadnoks. They're like, well, they're kind of the same intellect. We'll just kind of treat them as teenagers. I know, I thought the same thing, and then I go, wait a minute. That's right. They were supposed to just behave themselves and not destroy everybody. So I believe
All
it's
right.
my turn.
I believe so.
All right. The next one, I guess, is I kind of put it as a high because I thought it was pretty cool, especially going back and looking at these, was the when they were breakdancing in the streets. I thought that was pretty cool. And then, of course, with the recent, all the memes with the Olympics and the breakdancing. And I'm like, these guys are breakdancing way better than some of these that I've seen. But yeah, the breakdancing, I thought that was cool. Definitely reminded me, yep, that was the 80s.
That was definitely the 80s. I think this is going to be my last one, unless you don't take the one that I think you're going to take. I liked seeing Zartan and Firefly interacting just that little bit on the hydrofoil, and afterwards, it's just something you don't see very often. Those two don't usually interact. And it was neat, the two different personalities. Basically, they're mercenaries. Two different mercenaries interacting together. I thought it was pretty neat. It was a good snapshot that you don't get to see very often.
It was pretty good, and it was like a couple of adult brothers kind of bickering a little bit, because they both have their own style. And that was kind of in line. It wasn't what I had for my last one, but it is kind of along that line. I like how the remote that they use is no different than the Synthoid remote. Or I'm like, if all these went on, they could have grabbed the wrong remote for the wrong job. But I'm like, it's all the same remote across the board. And I think even G.I. Joe might have used the same remote at one point. It's like the third time I've seen this remote. I can't remember the other one. That was my last one on that one, was that they used the same remote. It must have had a good deal on them or something.
Yeah, I thought that too. I thought, that looks really familiar. So I thought you were going to bring up the point of the 4 people in the Dragonfly.
I thought about it, but I'm like, really, do I want to be that much of a broken record?
You're not wrong, though.
I know, the 4 people. I'm like, I just sold a Dragonfly. I know it doesn't hold 4 people.
It can barely hold 2 people.
Exactly. So. But yeah, I know, I saw that. And yeah, and then he lands like right in the middle of the street like that. And I'm like, no, that's a good pilot.
Wild Bill right there next to the crowd, just hovering right over top of him.
Well, it did the trick of getting rid of the gang members.
Anything else?
On that one, that's all I've got.
All right. Why don't you roll into the next one then?
All right, number 2. Money to Burn, written by Roger Slifer. After paying thieves to steal jewelry, paintings, and other valuables, Cobra uses a new device to remotely incinerate American currency. G.I. Joe is called in as a public disorder erupts and Cobra begins offering its own currency. With some difficulty, the Joes break through the long line of citizens waiting to exchange their valuables for Cobra's money at Extensive Enterprises and find Tomax and Zema meeting with a wealthy woman interested in investing her riches with Cobra. With the woman's eventual cooperation, Lady J takes her place via disguise and is escorted to Cobra's secret base inside a holographic mountain. She is quickly discovered, but Ripcord surmises the mountain's illusionary nature and reinforcements are parachuted in. The Joes assault Cobra's base while Lady J flees the Crimson Twins. A tide of melted snow slows the team's progress and causes a long stalemate until Ripcord plants a bomb, destroying the base. And Cobra is distracted by resulting rain of Cobra currency. Cobra's leader escape, but the plan is foiled and order is restored. 5 of the Joes celebrate by resuming a game of poker that has been interrupted by Cobra's scheme, and Ripcord ends up winning the pot.
All right, I'm going to go first. One of the things I've done previous few episodes is I pointed out some of these writers that worked on these episodes. This episode, we've got some people that did a lot of work on shows that you and I watched, shows some of our kids watched, some live action TV shows. It's crazy when you start looking these people up. This one, Roger Slifer, in 1983, he co-wrote with Keith Giffen Lobo for DC Comics, who initially wasn't popular until late 1980s, early 1990s. You know who Lobo is, correct?
I don't know much about him. I know of him. I don't know what his gig is, or I should read up on him because he does seem like a pretty interesting character.
He, like I said, he rose to popularity in late 80s, early 90s, right when I started buying comics. Kind of fallen away a little bit. But Roger Slifer also, as many of these people do, produced or co-produced other 80s and 90s cartoons such as RoboCop, My Little Pony, Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines, and Bucky O'Hare, and many others. I found all this information on IMDb and Wikipedia, so listeners, go take a look. As I said before, some of the stuff these people had a hand in, you don't realize it until you start looking into it. Some of our childhood cartoons wouldn't be around if these guys hadn't kept at it. Pretty interesting. So what do you got, George?
I thought it was interesting because this is back in the 80s. And right when Cobra Commander came out and started announcing things, and they were at the Treasury, and this guy that just come out of the back room, he looked like he worked in the mail room, and he's like, "Hey, boss, the snake guy's on again." And then, boom, he pops up and he pulls it up on his watch. I'm like, watch on a TV on a watch? I go, the guy was definitely making some coin back then.
He was ahead of his time.
Yes, he was.
The first one that I have that's, episode based is, so basically Cobra hired Tomax and Zaymot to run a pawn shop where people could trade their jewelry in for cash. Am I getting that right?
That's pretty much what you were seeing, yes. And it was definitely in the shadows of the night.
I remember in the episode, the big long line of people ready to turn their stuff in for money. A question for you. So these episodes with the big city, right? They're drawn as this bleak, desolate place in almost every 80s cartoon, right? You and I didn't grow up in a big city. I always thought, until I started going to these bigger cities, that these cities were just run down and nasty and no place you wanted to be.
Yeah, they always showed you the worst of the worst. These big cities have some really bad areas, really run down. But when you look at the percentage-wise, look at what Detroit was back in the 80s, 90s. Yeah, it was pretty run down and beat up. But you go there these days, and it's pretty nice. They did a lot of cleanup and put a lot more money back into it. But yeah, it's definitely gave you the perception, a bad perception of what these big cities were.
Okay, so it wasn't just me thinking that.
But on that note, the very first time I ever went to Chicago, we got lost, and they have all kinds of this underground parking in Chicago. And we got down in there, and we got lost, and that's exactly what it looked like. And it reminded me, I'm like, this is where I go to die. But yeah, other than that, Chicago was pretty cool. But yeah, we did get caught in the underground parking lot. That was interesting.
Probably a good way to put it. All right, so what's your next one?
My next one rolls off of the trading in the dark of night with Tomax and Zaymot, and is once again Extensive Enterprises is in the mix, but yet G.I. Joe in their short-term memory are like, these jokers are bad news. Why are we not? We know where they're at. They're right out in the open. Why are we not stopping them? Why are we not shutting them down? But they're always skirting right there on the edge of the law.
Well, like Tomax and Zaymot said, Cobra's money is as good as anybody else's money. They're not doing anything illegal, per se. People are giving them money. It's almost like Joe's having their charter contract that they have to be reactive and not proactive.
Right.
You think they want to be proactive.
Well, yeah, because they were just in an episode where all this money was raining down, and these guys were caught red-handed. Scarlet and Lady J caught them jumping out of the building. They knew who they were. I guess you can't fire unless you're fired upon.
That brings up one of mine. So here we go again with Extensive Enterprise office in every major city that people can go to. Probably some Extensive Enterprise building in a strip mall somewhere too, in these smaller towns.
Right next to a Little Caesars.
Little Caesars and a Subway.
And a nail salon.
Oh yeah, of course. And don't forget the Chinese buffet.
Yes, heck yeah.
All right. You got another one?
I got a couple, but we'll give you another one here. It was Scarlet, right? Yeah, it was Scarlet that was undercover. It was Lady J? God, I thought it was Scarlet. But anyway, so Lady J was undercover. So Lady J, she's escaping. Yeah, that's right, because she threw her little javelin there through the skylight eyeball of the snake. She's up there on the roof, up on top, and all of a sudden an Arctic trooper just rolls right up on the rooftop on his skis, like, "Hey, what's going on here?" I'm like, where did you come from?
That's like the quad on the roof in the Cobra candidate.
But yeah, I was like, well, that was interesting, but I guess she's got to get her skis somehow.
And she did a pretty good job when she was skiing too.
Yeah,
I think
she did.
There's another episode coming up. She does some skiing in too. So we've kind of talked about a lot of it. Right before the big fight, Ace and Ripcord are flying around in a Sky Striker. I just got to say that Ripcord has a large set of parachutes. Jumping out of that plane, thinking it's a holographic mountain. What if it wasn't a holographic mountain? He's just going for it. You got to say, he's got some big cojones.
Yeah, but they also said, well, there's nothing on the radar. And he's like, nothing on the radar. It's not there. Let's do this. I'm sure that he had enough snow. If he would have hit it, he'd have been fine. He'd have bounced a couple of times and he'd have been all right.
Maybe. You got one more then, right?
One, maybe two, but I'll give you one more. Every time that Tomax and Zaymont, they get in a fight, one of them gets punched and the other one says, oh, I lost an eye, or the other one freaks out. And of course, then there's always a dumb pun, double trouble or whatever. But when they were in this fight, when he went down the hill to finish off Lady J, I think it was Tomax, and he ended up getting thrown off the cliff, but yet it didn't affect Zaymont, who just came right down to his rescue. I'm like, wait a minute. It works every time, but maybe not in the snow, or I know they can't be perfect on that. It's definitely one of those things not everybody's going to pay attention to.
The wind was blowing the wrong way, so it didn't affect it.
That's right. The stars were not aligned.
Yeah.
It was, the humidity was too low.
The last one I got is that leading up to this battle, and it was a decent battle. That's what I like about it. I enjoyed watching this final battle in the episode. There's good vehicle action, good hand-to-hand, and a good variety of suspense, between the vehicles, Flint and Lady J fighting the twins. It was just a good variety. I liked it.
Yeah, I agree. There was definitely a lot of things going on. Everybody was doing their part to accomplish the mission, and it was a pretty good fight scene. I really liked it. But then, of course, kind of rolls into my last one. They got this fight going on, and guess who takes off? He's like, I'm going to go direct this fight from a distance. I'm going to AKA run away. That's typical.
That's typical Cobra Commander.
Yep.
He says, you guys go take care of it. I'm going to go the other way.
For sure.
Any more?
That is all I've got on this one.
All right. We're going to roll right into the third episode we're going to discuss, and that is Operation Mind Menace, written by Martin Pasco. Flash and Airborne fly over Easter Island, pursuing a Cobra Fang that is transporting a kidnapped Hawaiian woman, who is later revealed to be an out-of-body traveler. Meanwhile, Duke and Lady J observe an ESP test involving Airborne's brother, Tommy, who is revealed to be a telekinetic. Cobra captures Tommy during the test, holding off the Joes with a man who can create fire with his mind. The Joes give chase, but are shot down over Washington, D.C. Flash and Airborne are captured on the island, where Cobra is using the powers of captured psionics against their will. Cobra departs the island, leaving Flash and Airborne to fend off the island's famous statues, which have been brought to life using Tommy's amplified powers. Duke and Lady J arrive at the island in time to rescue Flash and Airborne, and they and several other Joes assault Cobra Island at a secondary mountain base. They free the psionics guarding the base outside by removing their slave crowns, but are caught by interior defenses produced by Tommy. Airborne makes his way to Tommy's shielded post and uses an old model helicopter he had made as a child to stir up family sentiment that overrides the slave crown. Cobra's leaders escape, but the Joes and the rescued psionics celebrate with hot dogs on the National Mall. George, what is your first high, low, or fatal fluffy?
My first one, it's kind of a long one, but it's the whole geographic of this whole episode. It started off where this girl gets taken from Hawaii. They were in a Sky Striker? No, they were in a Firefly, right?
Dragonfly.
Not Firefly, sorry. Dragonfly. So they're going from Hawaii, chasing this Fang, which is smaller, all the way to Easter Island, which I don't know if everybody knows where Easter Island is, roughly. Another part that they had is when they were in D.C., and they chased from D.C. to Easter Island, which is a long ways away. And I think that was in a Skyhawk, right?
Yeah, yep, Skyhawks.
And then the last was when they rescued Airborne. Is it Airborne?
Yes, Airborne.
Airborne and Flash. And they picked him up from Easter Island. And he says, hey, I got to go back to the HQ, which we don't know where that's at. They have multiple, but it's probably somewhere stateside. And then they had to go to K-12 Mountain. And they did this all in minutes. I don't know if they have wormholes or what they got going on, but it's pretty phenomenal how quickly they make all that happen. I know that it's not real and all that. All the places they were at in a short period of time definitely kind of was a little mind-boggling.
Yeah, that was one of mine too. This is what tipped me off. The whole thing was Airborne says, hey, I got to swing by the base and pick something up before we go to the mountain base of the Himalayas. Like, wait a minute. That's not just across the street. It's not just across even the country. It's a whole different continent. Like, what the heck? Yeah, that was one that I was going to bring up. Maybe they got that portal from the Transformers so they can move them through time and space quicker.
Or My Little Pony's Rainbow.
Oh, hey, there you go. Yep. As we discussed last episode, they're kind of all connected.
Exactly.
I didn't know about the rainbow.
I didn't either. I just made it up. I just assumed that there's got to be a rainbow. There's all these ponies and some are unicorns, and there's got to be a rainbow. I could ask my wife. She knows better than I do. I know nothing about it. Honest. All right. So I guess since I stole yours, that still puts me up as next. Another one I've got here is when they were on Easter Island and Flash and Airborne were in those cages, and I saw those Hiss tanks. I thought, well, there's your next custom idea.
If I keep letting you go first, I'm not going to have anything to add because I had that as one of mine also.
Almost like we're related or something. I'm going to let you go on your next one, and even though I just stole it, just to see if maybe my next one is the same as yours.
I don't think it will be because I'm going to talk about the writer, Martin Pasco.
I know nothing.
So Martin Pasco wrote for DC and Marvel in the 70s and 80s. He wrote characters such as Superman, Wonder Woman, Justice League, Star Trek, Swamp Thing, and many, many others. In animation, he worked on, again, this is another creator that did multiple cartoons from the 80s, 90s. He worked on Thundar the Barbarian, TMNT, My Little Pony, Bucky O'Hare, The Tick, Batman the Animated Series, and many others. Again, you go through the IMDb and it's just chock full. Like I said, it's neat looking this stuff up.
They're not one-trick ponies, right? They don't say, I only do robots. This is all my brain can handle. They're handling ponies and robots and bats and all kinds of stuff. It's pretty impressive when I have enough trouble writing an email. And these guys are able to switch from one genre to the next. It's pretty impressive.
You have to be able to because you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. Since I know you didn't have that one, what's your next one?
My next one is has to do with the final battle, and they were fighting the psionics, and you had the fire guy. I like how they had barbecue. That's his thing, and that's who he went up against this guy and ended up saving him, in the long run. But they sent somebody in that was equipped to handle the situation, and he took care of it.
I noticed that it was blowtorch to melt the snow.
Did I say barbecue?
You said barbecue.
I meant blowtorch. My apologies.
Yep, they're easy to get mixed up. They really are. But I noticed that blowtorch, and there was one other one too. You didn't see him the whole episode until that final battle, and it'll come to me after we're done.
They had Snow Job.
That's who it was, a Snow Job. Yeah, I liked how they, as you mentioned, they used people for their specialty. They didn't just throw some random guy in there and melt it with a laser gun. We kind of mentioned it. It's kind of a theme. Do all brothers or siblings have some sort of connection in the Sunbow cartoon? Like Tomax and Zaymot, and then Airborne and his brother. Maybe we should go get tested and see if we have powers together.
I'm pretty sure our powers are definitely... Are you ready for tacos? Yeah, I'm ready for tacos. I was just thinking the same thing. Let's go eat them. It's going to be that kind of superpower. It's not going to be anything crazy like telekinesis or ESP. It's going to be definitely something not as useful.
From the little bit that you and I went to sales, we do pretty good there too.
That is true. It helps us divide and conquer. That's for sure. Especially if there's more than one sale on a street, we can go left and right, or we walk up to a sale. You go left, you go right. We flag it to each other or whatever. You're right. I guess maybe we should get tested. I'm just afraid what they're going to say.
You're right. Maybe we should just leave that alone. You got any more?
That's all I've got on this one.
All right. I got one question. Of all the powers that you saw in this episode, which one would you prefer to have?
They really only showed 3, right?
They had the fire, Tommy with his telekinesis, and then the out-of-body girl from Hawaii.
I'd have to go with telekinesis. I'd get more use out of that. I'd be able to get a spoon and ice cream without getting out of my chair.
That's kind of what I was thinking, too.
That's probably out of those 3. But there was all kinds of them that they saved. I was wondering, too, I guess I did have another one. I just forgot to write it down. Is when they all saved them, did they all go live with Professor X?
Maybe they're the New Mutants.
See?
The New Mutants or something like that. Yeah, there you go.
Maybe they're the X-Men recruits.
Yeah, it's a good possibility. All right. I think that's all I've got for this one, George.
All right. Let's roll into number 4. The Battle for the Train of Gold, written by David Karen. Ready for a possible Cobra attack, the Joes guard the Bureau of Engraving. The attack comes, but only a distraction while Major Blood steals a videotape with information on the gold depository at Fort Knox. G.I. Joe sends all of its forces to protect the installation over the objections of its commanding officer, General Stack. As the Joes prepare for another battle, Zartan uses a tunnel beneath the repository to kidnap and impersonate the general and order the guards outside. Noticing the guards' departure, Duke, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes check out the vault and are captured by Zartan, who uses them as hostages as Cobra transports the gold down the tunnel to a waiting train. A battle ensues as Cobra occupies the base and destroys most of the Joes' equipment. 8 Joes discover the tunnel and give chase, but have no fast way to pursue the departing train. Thunder leads the team to a nearby ranch where they mount horses and use a shortcut to reach Cobra. The hostages break free of their restraints shortly before the Joes get on board. During the fighting, Buzzer's chainsaw cuts into the pressure regulator, causing an explosion and throws the train off the tracks. Dreadnoks escape, but the Joes recover the gold and receive an apology from General Stack.
All right, so this episode, the writer David Karen wrote many animation and live action shows from the 80s and 90s. He did G.I. Joe for Sunbow and DIC, or DEEK, Knight Rider, TMNT, Walker Texas Ranger, Camp Candy, Thundercats, Cops, so many more. Some that were a little more popular, some, only one season or half a season. But again, a bunch of cartoons from our childhood. And live action shows. I mean, Texas Ranger? Come on.
So he wrote for the show. There wasn't a comic book or anything like that for
No.
Texas Ranger. Okay.
No, show.
Okay. When you said that, I thought, well, I didn't know if they even did a cartoon or anything like that. Well, I thought they did do a cartoon.
Well, I know they had Karate Commandos. I don't know if that was a show or not.
Okay.
What do you got?
All right. The first one I got is probably one that you have that was kind of a Fatal Fluffy, is when they were in the treasury. They were all undercover. And then you look down there in the sea of employees and you got Snake Eyes, quote unquote, undercover. Yeah, that's not undercover, dude. I just thought that was pretty funny.
I had flashbacks of when Shipwreck and Snake Eyes were in the Pyramid of Darkness with Polly and Timber. And he just had that hat on in a Cobra uniform.
All hail Cobra Commander.
Yeah, that was one of mine too. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Really? I mean, Duke and Scarlet could pass for employees. Real easy. They were great, but Snake Eyes, yeah.
Yeah, they could have swapped out CoverGirl and put Snake Eyes in the Wolverine just so that he was hidden much better.
It is one of mine. In this episode, Duke, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes spent a lot of time together. And, in the cartoon, it's Duke and Scarlet. In the comic book, it's Scarlet and Snake Eyes. In this episode, they spent a lot of time together. So I don't know what they're thinking or doing, but
they were a throuple.
Yeah, maybe.
Ahead of their time.
That all kind of rolled together. So what do you got?
I have one other one. There was when they were in Fort Knox and they were trapped inside the vault and they're pounding on the door, trying to get it open, figure it out. They're standing there with their back to people and there's lasers hitting all around them. They're just carrying on a conversation like somebody's not trying to kill them. I understand they have the aim of a stormtrooper, but I still would probably be taking cover.
You would think. Maybe we know they're that bad, or the other people got their backs. What I found funny, it was just kind of a perfect timing moment. Just as the general was complaining about not wanting help from the Joes, what happens to him? Zartan, comes up from the under the building and pulls him down and kidnaps him. I thought that was the perfect timing, great comedic moment. Loved it.
Karma will bite you when you least expect it.
Exactly.
Or a snake.
Yep. What is another high-low or Fatal Fluffy of yours?
Well, I failed on pulling up too many, even though I really enjoyed this episode. But maybe I'll think of another one as you're going through yours. But I just had the two.
All right. One of mine, and I've only got a couple more that just kind of make sure we have enough to talk about. So they're out there to steal all this gold, right? Well, first of all, they broke into the treasury where they could have taken money. They were already there. They didn't. They just took a tape. And then they were in Fort Knox, and then they stole all that gold, but they took it to that bullet train. How expensive was that bullet train? Did they just think it, oh, I'm just going to spend all this money making this bullet train thinking they're going to get all this extra money out? But that bullet train couldn't have been cheap. Would they have been better off to just save the money for the bullet train and invest it somewhere else?
Yeah, well, we all know that they don't think that far ahead. Yeah, that bullet train was pretty, it was fully armored. You know, it was the whole 9 yards and still able to go 200 miles an hour, but yet they got caught by horses.
Horses that Gung Ho had a hard time riding. That was funny.
Yeah, but yet they were all within minutes and enough time to catch up to the train. They were all professional riders.
Yeah, that train must have been way back or farther away out. But yeah, that's another one of those timing things. You just like, okay, suspend reality.
That had them off at the pass, you know, that was where the wormhole was. They were able to just kind of jump into a different area. It was their transport.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. So the fifth and final one we're going to cover today is called Cobra Soundwaves, written by Ted Peterson. In the Middle East, a Rattler ambush lures G.I. Joe Sky Strikers to a Cobra base whose ultrasonic weapon tears the Joe planes apart, causing Ace, Gung Ho, and Roadblock to be captured. They are taken to an arena of sport and pitted against a giant robotic crab. The Joes eventually escape the arena and find their way to an underground river beneath the base. Meanwhile, Flint prepares to defend the nearby oil fields of Sheikh Ali, while Scarlet persuades Wild Bill to take her on an unauthorized search for the 3 missing Joes. Cobra attacks the oil fields while the Joes are missing their air power and their best soldiers. Scarlet spots the missing Joes just as they emerge from the river, and they quickly return to Ali's palace to board Sky Strikers. They save the day at the oil fields, but Sheikh Ali is kidnapped while watching the action. A team of Joes uses the underground river to sneak around the Cobra base for a rescue, and others use Sky Strikers as a ruse to draw out the ultrasonic weapon, which is then attacked using gliders, which are immune to the weapon's effect. The rescue team saves Sheikh Ali as Cobra's leaders escape, and the Sheikh treats Joes to a banquet of food prepared by Roadblock and Wild Bill. So, George, what is your first high, low, or fatal fluffy?
Well, my first one that I noticed was the crab. Here they are again, you know, letting their toys play with their capture, you know, and not just lock them up. Oh, and then we're not even going to stick around and watch this thing happen. We're going to let it do its thing, and we're going to let the Crimson Guards just kind of keep an eye on and see what happens. It's just kind of, they keep doing the same mistakes over and over.
They must have these arenas built in every Cobra base around the world.
Yep. Well, they use it for company meetings.
Oh,
you know, company-wide, you know, quarterly meetings kind of thing. But it's also doubles as a arena of death.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a good tax write-off.
It's like looks like when they use the ice hockey rink for the basketball court, they just cover it up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. And then they bring in dirt, and they can bring in the monster trucks. You know,
there you go.
They're utilizing the space and getting every inch that they can get.
So what I had about the crab was, to me, if I was a kid, it would look a little freaky, a little scary, right? But it was slow moving and very easily confused. I mean, they lit a fire. First of all, where'd they find the stuff to light the fire? That's right. He used the stick thing, didn't he? Or
no, he used a couple of stones.
Oh, that's right. Stones.
Yep.
Yes. Like you said, it was slow moving, easily confused, and they just left them alone. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right. What is another one for you, George?
Another one is, I like the ingenuity when they were escaping. They thought there was the river or water was down below, and they said, well, if I just override these laser rifles, we'll just make a heck of an explosion. And so they shoved them all on the ground, which is a good thing they had the Crimson Guards with the bayonets on it so they could stick it in the dirt easier. And then they just blew that hole in the ground. I'm like, that's pretty good thinking. I really like that.
I've got that one, and I had a question mark. Ingenious or stupid? It worked, so it was ingenious.
It was definitely rolling the dice. It could have went from hero to failure real quick.
Yeah, if it wouldn't have worked, it would have been stupid. But it worked, so it was ingenious.
Yeah, it's only stupid when it doesn't work.
Yeah. Rolling into, we're going to talk about the creator again. This is another one, 80s and 90s cartoons. More into the 90s a little bit. Late 80s, early 90s. So this might have been one of his first writing gigs or something. But he had X-Men, the animated series, Batman, the animated series, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Cops, Centurions, and so many more. I think he was another one that wrote for Sunbow and DIC for G.I. Joe as well. What is your next or another high, low, or Fatal Fluffy?
I'll get into that one in just a second. You had me really intrigued when you said Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. I'd never heard of that one.
That one, I don't know if I've ever watched it. I've seen comics of it.
There's a video game of it, too.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
I'd put money on that. That's a pretty rare. Probably the NES, the time frame it came out, right?
NES or Super NES.
Looks like Sega CD. Yeah, they had action figures. Yeah, the Sega Genesis is what I'm seeing. Kind of an exclusive. The toys were pretty. The Cadillac car was pretty cool. I'll have to keep an eye out for those. I'll bet those are toys that I've overlooked, and you don't see them very often. Never really took off, but yeah.
Some of those that don't take off are some of the ones that are sought after because of the scarcity and
some people did. Right, some people did like them because they made them. But the video game, it's $30. Figures are $20 if they're carded, so they're not big money, but I like it. It's kind of futuristic with the fighting dinosaurs with Cadillacs. What do they think of next? Let's see here. I've got back to when they were in that river and they were escaping and they came down this little waterfall and they kind of everything slowed down. And and they climb up on the shore and we can get out that way. But yet when they went to sneak back in and they dropped that boat down, how'd they get up that waterfall? They just showed them they just started heading on up there. They didn't have to forage for that waterfall at all.
It's that portal again.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's everywhere.
I forget about their transport. Yeah, they beam me up, beam me whatever. Yeah, telekinesis that they weren't showing us.
Transportal.
Yes, transportal. Yeah.
See? One of them that I had, so Airborne in Operation Mind Menace, he was able to sense when his brother was in trouble, or vice versa. Tommy could sense when Airborne was in trouble. But in this episode, Airborne got a major upgrade in his powers because he was able to feel when the Sheik was in trouble when he got captured.
I thought that was Ace.
No, that was Airborne.
Was it Airborne? Okay, so he does have powers then, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit more than just his brother.
I thought it was Ace that had those.
No, Airborne from the Operation Mind Menace. So I'm glad that they carried it over a little bit and used it, not just one time, but he got a major upgrade when somebody he's not even related to felt it. So it was a good plot connection between the two episodes. I enjoyed that.
I guess we'll have to read his file card to see if it really is on his file card, like they said. Maybe it's the redacted file card. They blacked that part out.
Along with the Zartan having schizophrenia.
Yes.
I looked at his file card. The only thing it really says about any kind of powers, or even it's not even powers, because at this time Larry Hamill was writing the file cards, but he didn't include a lot of the extra stuff, the psi powers and stuff. I think this is more the cartoon side. The only thing on the file card it really says that's even remotely like that is used. So Airborne jokes around and gets loose, but he's serious too, dead serious. You look at him and sometimes he's looking right through you. Must be the Indian in him. The Navajos call it the far-seeing look. Spooky. Really, that's the only thing that hints on that. I think it was more of a cartoon-based thing.
I gotcha.
So, anything else that you have?
I've got one more, and it is back to when they were making their great escape, and they came to those two tunnels choices. Ace flipped a coin, and then you had Gung Ho, and I had to listen to it many of times, and it was M-U-C-K. I'm not going to say it because if I say it, it could sound wrong. I'm like, did he just drop the F-bomb? So I'm like, there's no way. When I finally listened to it, wearing my headphones is when I actually heard what he said. I'm like, okay, that makes total sense.
I thought that too. So you're not the only one that heard it wrong or not intended. Yes.
Yeah, I backed it up 2 or 3 times this morning when I was watching it. I was making some notes just before we got on here, and I listened to it with my headphones. I go, okay, M-U-C-K.
Mucky Mouse.
Yes.
So the last one I have is when they showed the outside of that Cobra base. Had we seen that one before? Or am I thinking just because I've watched these episodes so many times, but I could have swore that we have seen that one in a previous episode.
Yeah, we have seen that one, and it also resembles something that looks like it's a little run down from Thundercats.
Yes. Not knowing for sure if we had seen it, I didn't go back and look to see what episode, but
Maybe they used the same architect for multiple places that they were going.
Maybe they get a discount if they use the same layout.
It was the same kit.
Yep.
They bought it from Menards' kit, yeah.
There you go. So you got any more to discuss?
That is all I've got on this one.
Same here. Oh, no. I'm sorry. I do have one more, and I can't believe you didn't bring it up. The final scene, when they're in the Sheik's palace, I would be totally okay with a dinner that both Roadblock and Wild Bill made. Think about it.
All day long.
All day long. Some Texas ribs, barbecue, steak, and whatever creation Roadblock wants to make, sign me up. I would be all for that.
I'm down with whatever those, especially Roadblock. Well, because isn't that on his file card? He's gourmet chef. Yeah, all day long.
I thought that was a fun little tidbit that they put in there.
So does that mean that when Roadblock retired from G.I. Joe, he actually became, and he was working for, you ever see the movie Rundown?
No.
With Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
Never seen it.
Well, he's a gourmet chef with this crime boss trying to earn, get his own restaurant. That's totally Roadblock all day long. And then who was Roadblock in G.I. Joe?
The Rock.
Yep.
That makes sense.
It's all in the same universe.
Yep. He did have, there was one comic book in the first Marvel run, I believe it was 154, where he's going to a cooking contest and the plane that he's on gets hijacked. And then there's a Devil's Due, I believe it's a Frontline comic, where he's actually on a cooking show and the Dreadnoks try to take over the studio for some reason. They go a little more into it later on in the comics, him being a chef.
Cobra has bitten us once too often, and we're going to start biting back.
So we've covered these episodes in detail. Now let's highlight some of the episodes by picking one of each for the following subjects. The most significant episode. The episode that stood out from the rest due to character building, overall story, and world building. George, I'm going to let you go first on this one.
For me, I would have to go with the Cobra's Candidate. For me, because it definitely, maybe not to that scale, but historically that stuff has kind of happened. Back to the breakdancing. That's just the vibe of the 80s. And that's when you look back, when somebody talks about 80s, a lot of that stuff, the gangs and with the breakdancing and in the streets and street parties. And it wasn't all about just fighting. They were just having dance-offs. That was probably one of the most significant ones for me. How about you?
I am going to go with Operation Mind Menace. Hear me out. From the world building and character building, how close Tommy and his brother were. Yeah, they were all over the globe, but just how close they were, how they cared about each other. To me, that was, and with the world building, they carried one aspect of this into a couple episodes later. That's the one I'm going with, is my Operation Mind Menace. So, craziest episode. Which one of these episodes had the craziest moments and plot?
Well, I would probably have to roll off of what you were saying with your most significant is, with the whole special powers, it was kind of mildly hokey, but I would have to say that would be the craziest episode just because of the quote unquote special powers and all that. It was out there, but it wasn't so far out there that it was not believable. I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm going to double up on this one with Operation Mind Menace as the craziest because, as we joked this episode, the transportals, this is the one that started it all, how did they get from here to here? And yeah, the mind stuff is crazy, but the Operation Mind Menace is the craziest one that we discovered. Most of the other ones could be explained a little bit with science. This one's kind of out there. So, yeah, your single most memorable moment of any of the episodes, or two if you've got a couple. Memorable could be so many different things. It could be a meaningful one or a funny one. Probably the one I laughed the most is when Gung Ho was trying to get on that horse multiple times. And I know your wife loves her horses. Growing up, we were around horses at Grandma Jean's. I am not a big fan of horses, just not a fan. But I remember many times trying to get on a horse and not being able to, so I could relate to Gung Ho. So that was one of my memorable moments.
Yeah, it's riding horses. Anybody can get on them, but not everybody can stay on them.
They were okay. Maybe I was too afraid of them. They knew that.
Being around them, I get it. I get why people like horses, but it takes a special kind of person to really do that.
Patience, I'm guessing.
Definitely. Don't let your guard down because they know when they could take advantage of you. And I've had that happen. They're sneaky little buggers sometimes. They've all got their own personality. That's the coolest thing about them. But I get it if it's not for everybody.
Yeah. So did any memorable moments spark into your head?
I keep coming back to the breakdancing. You know, anytime like that exact scene, it pops in my head all the time. Anytime breakdancing comes up or dancing in the streets or anything, I don't know why that one always pops into my head. Probably because I'm a terrible dancer and, you know, they make it look easy or something. I don't know. But that one definitely pops in my head.
Yeah, that definitely a sign of the 80s. So, all right. So now we've discussed all that stuff. What was your single most favorite episode or two that we covered today? And now that we're only covering 5, it might be a little bit easier to choose.
So my 2 favorites would be Money to Burn and Battle for the Train of Gold. Probably putting Battle for the Train of Gold at the top.
All right. Mine would be the Soundwaves. I like the different scenarios that they were put in, you know, having to think of ways to get out of the traps and the battle in the sky. And another favorite would be the Money to Burn. I like the different environments using the different characters once they got into the environment. I like seeing the snowcats.
Yeah, in the battle scene, that's probably what puts that one
Yes.
towards the top out of all of them. Is, you know, the battle scenes, the fight scenes, they were in a lot of different areas, and you know, the battle cats were actually drawn properly, and they weren't oversized.
They weren't supersized like in the
Aurora Borealis.
Yeah.
Must have been the Aurora Borealis that did it.
All right, George, thank you. Now that George and I have gone through our most significant, craziest, single most memorable moment and favorite moment, listeners, let us know what yours are by commenting on the Twitter or X, the YouTube, Facebook. Just let us know what some of your favorites and craziest are. With our discussion episode highlights covered, we're going to roll into a segment we added a few episodes back, the Duke capture count.
I want the Joes on full alert. Cobra's up to something big.
This is a segment that will continue through the remainder of the cartoon podcast episodes, tracking the number of times that Duke gets captured. As of Outpost episode 9, we are at 5 times that Duke has been captured. So how many times did he get captured in the episodes we covered today? I only found one, and it's a little bit of a stretch. If we're going to include when Duke, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes got captured in the Train of Gold episode. He got captured, even though others were with him. I'm going to count it.
Well, there was other ones when Snake Eyes gets captured with Duke a lot. Captured is captured, whether you're alone or not. And he could have gotten captured twice in that episode when he got knocked out at the Treasury.
Yep.
They weren't there for that. They were only there for the one thing.
The tape.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, there's one more. So we're up to 6 now.
Yep.
Anything else you want to bring up before we go into our final segment?
No, I think we've covered everything. All my notes are either checked off or crossed off. So anything that I remembered or wrote down, we've discussed.
All right. So we're going to roll into our final segment, Military Surplus.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
Here at the Outpost, on each episode, besides discussing the toys, comics, and cartoons of the highlighted year, we discuss a peripheral item related to G.I. Joe. This episode, we are going to discuss the lunchboxes and thermoses of G.I. Joe. Once again, we will be using 3djoes.com for our information. And as a side note, 3D Joes has a great video on their YouTube that covers these lunchboxes. And while you're at it, watch some of their archive videos they have of old comic book cartoons, toy cartoons, and just some interviews, and it's great. And while you're there, see if they have any of the Art of G.I. Joe books that are 20 pounds full of G.I. Joe art goodness. You will not be disappointed if you pick one of those up. So there are 11 lunchboxes that were released from 82 to 92, and we covered the first 6 on episode 9 of The Outpost. Go back, take a listen. This episode, we're going to discuss the remaining 5. The first one is from 1998, a plastic lunchbox from Aladdin.
1988, you mean?
Oh, man. Yes, 1988. At least I didn't get the size wrong yet. So, Lunchbox from 1988, plastic one from Aladdin. And this is of, now looks like there's two different versions, a blue one and a red one. I'm not sure if one's more rare than the other. That's one, I think Carson from 3D Joe's talks about that in the video. But the same picture is the blue and the red. They both have the same.
Well, that's if you had brothers.
There you go. You can tell the difference because the Thermos's cap is blue or red too. So you can mix and match or keep them the same. So this looks like pretty much box art from the Tiger Force vehicle. That is the Tiger Shark. What do you think of that?
I really like the art on the mailbox, or the mailbox, and the lunchbox too. That's pretty cool. I want to say I do recall seeing this, but I can't remember. Pretty sure we didn't have it. I don't remember what, if any, G.I. Joe boxes we actually had. But yeah, this one's pretty cool. You know, it's Tiger Force, so it was definitely not as common as. But they only had the one character on the, that was Lifeline, right?
Yep, Lifeline on the Thermos.
Yep.
And what's funny, and I guess I never noticed this, on the box art of the Tiger Shark, you've got 3 Tiger Force characters on the boat. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 2. You got Tiger Force Roadblock, Tiger Force Bazooka, but then you have Spearhead and Muskrat, non-Tiger Force characters in the art. That's kind of odd.
Their uniforms were in the wash.
Maybe.
They're at the cleaners. I'm surprised that Roadblock was not on the Thermos. He's the food guy. They had Mom's Chicken Noodle Soup, which was then, of course, a Lifeline. Yeah.
That and The Price is Right.
Exactly.
When you were sick, that was all you wanted to watch. So that was the highlight of your day. This is, pretty basic. You got the box art, 2 different colors. I don't remember having one as a kid, like you said. I don't think I got this one.
I don't even think I've seen it in the wild, but I haven't but recently started to pay closer attention to the lunchboxes.
I've been getting rid of mine because space.
I look at them from a pure flipping side of it. I'm sure there's a lunchbox out there that you'll probably want and hang on to, but we just haven't found it yet.
Not so much a lunchbox. There's a couple thermoses, and one's coming up in the next one, which is from 1989. Again, a plastic one from Aladdin. And it is the box art for the Crusader. But the thermos is what really grabs me. That art of rock and roll and Snake Eyes. This is when I started getting into the Joe comic books. So these characters were just starting to come out in the comics. Now, the Snake Eyes on the thermos is his box art. But rock and roll, it's an image I've never seen. And then it's got some headshots of other characters from 1989. Countdown, Backblast, Deep Six version 2, Stalker. My favorite version of Stalker. But no, this is one that if I found this thermos, this is one I would be keeping.
All right, note taken. I
still wouldn't open the lid.
I'll tell you what, the last 2 I've bought, the one I bought was brand spanking new. It didn't have any odor at all.
Wow.
Don't recall the one I just picked up a couple weeks ago if I've opened that, and I probably won't.
All right. We got to talk about the lunchbox a little bit. It's the Crusader box art, the second space shuttle. It's cool, but it's just the box art.
Yeah, it's not too crazy. It's cool, but it definitely wouldn't be one that I'd gravitate towards.
No, and the only reason I would is knowing that thermos could possibly be in there.
Yep, exactly.
All right. We got a few more to go.
More 1990.
1990, yeah. What do you think about that one, George?
Well, that one, that's definitely pulling us into the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
It's what the heck is, I can't remember what that thing is.
That's the General.
That's the General, okay. I wanted to say Rolling Thunder, and I knew better. Now, the thermos is interesting. It's got a lot of different pictures. It's got your hooded Cobra Commander.
Yep.
Was it G2, Snake Eyes?
G3.
Oh, 3. And it's cut off on the picture below Cobra Commander. Who is that? Is that Hawk? Or is that Dusty?
That's Dusty.
That's Dusty, yep.
And I could probably tell you what issue that's from. That is from issue number 100.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, that one of Cobra Commander's from when the original returned in issue 98. This is a year after I started buying G.I. Joe comics. This is another one of those thermoses that if I found the thermos, I'd be buying it.
I like the Cobra Commander, and then he's got the Crimson Guards over his shoulder. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, this MD Bright artwork is really, really good.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't quite match the Lunchbox. You know, you wouldn't think that those two went together. You know, just because of the artwork, they don't quite match, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They kind of clash a little bit.
It's box art, and then I think every image on that thermos is from the comics.
Okay.
Really cool. So this is another one that I got to keep my eye out for. Thermos, at least. Next one is from 1992, and it's another blue Aladdin. It's the Ghost Striker plane. What do you think of that plane? Have you ever seen that image?
No, I was looking. I'm like, what in the heck? I've never seen that one. I'm like, I didn't know that they even had the X16. It's the first time I've actually seen this plane. Did they make it a toy?
Yeah, I believe in 1993. So this is kind of a preview, or this might have been like late 92 into 93 when school year when they were trying to sell this. The Ghost Striker is an underrated plane. I like it. You just don't see him very often. I've never seen him in the wild. Again, I sound like a broken record, but the thermos, at least the Storm Shadow image, is one that I really, really like. The vehicle part of it, it's okay. But the one with Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes on it, that would gravitate me towards wanting to get that thermos. I might have to start a thermos collection instead of a lunchbox collection.
It takes up less space, and the artwork and the stickers on those lunchboxes, they just don't hold up. And as long as it didn't spend too much time in the dishwasher, the thermoses did hold up pretty good. But yeah, I looked up that X16, and it's about $120 complete on eBay. Anywhere from $60 to $100, you could have yourself one, whether or not how complete it is. I don't even know who the pilot was with that.
I think it's Ace.
It is
actually
Ace,
a very good version of him too.
Ace V3.
Yep.
He's got red hair. Looks like he's got red eyeballs too, but he needs some sleep. The thermoses, you don't come across them. I don't know if they just got tossed because they got moldy and stinky, and
like you said, they spend too much time in the dishwasher, the plastic starts swelling and breaking. And so finding the thermos is the expensive part of it usually.
Yep.
All right, the last one, and I hate to end on this one. Maybe I should have swapped them.
But you've got to do it justice.
Well, we could have did this one first and then the Ghost Striker because they're both from 92. So, but this is from SGI Incorporated. I think SGI had one. Maybe I'm thinking something different. But anyway, it's a lunch bunch, and it's a soft-sided lunchbox. It's not a hard side with a zipper, green, blue, some red trim on it, and it had on the front picture of, I'm guessing, Law and Order, Snake Eyes version 4. That looks like Flint from his Eco Warriors, and General Hawk when he had the big jetpack. And they're not very good color representation of the characters either.
Law and Order is probably the closest.
Snake Eyes was a little blue.
They don't even have his dog.
No, well, he didn't come with the dog when he was a Sonic Fighter. Oh. It was just Law.
Okay. I'll tell you what, the thermos is the dumbest looking thermos I've ever seen.
Lunch Bunch.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Did it come with tissues?
Yeah, for crying because your mom and dad bought it for you. Wow, that's a lot of tissues.
I think a lot of
crying.
I think the tissue packaging is better than the lunchbox.
I like the tissue packaging. Yeah, you'll never find those.
Actually, they're at the mall in Grand Haven. I saw some of these, but they wanted like $30 for 3 of them. All right, so with that somewhat let down of the lunchboxes, which one of these is your favorite?
Ooh, any of them but the last one, in a nutshell. But I'm going to probably have to go with either the 1990 or the 88. I don't know. Lunchbox, I'd probably go with 88. But Thermos, I'd probably go with the 90 is what I would have to do. I'd have to kind of split it up a little bit. The Thermos is tough because, the 90 and 92, those are both pretty good. The Aladdin 92 is the one I like the Thermos of.
The blue Ghost Striker?
Yeah.
Okay. So just to recap, Lunchbox, you like which one do you prefer?
I like the Tiger Force.
The Tiger Force, the 88 Tiger Force?
Yes, Tiger Force.
And Thermos, you like the one from the 1992 with the Ghost Striker?
Yeah.
The one with the Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow on the cliff looking one?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Maybe second place with 1990 Thermos, but But yeah, there's not a complete set that I like over the I kind of like certain lunchboxes better.
I'm kind of with you. I like the 1992 Ghost Striker one, lunchbox. And as far as thermos, I've got to go with 1990. All the MD Bright art from the comics. That one was pretty cool.
Yeah, they were all pretty good, with the exception of the Lunch Bunch.
So, listeners, let us know what your favorite lunchbox or combination of lunchbox and thermoses are. Are you going to be a purist and stick with as they came together, or are you going to split them up like George and I did? Let us know. All right. So, any closing thoughts on anything, George?
Nothing that we haven't already talked about.
All right. And in closing, thank you for joining George and myself for this episode of G.I. Joe Outpost. George, thank you for spending time discussing another 5 episodes of the cartoon. And if our listeners wanted to contact you, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on George Meal on Facebook. I've also got my other Facebook is Meals, Steals, and Deals. But the best way to get a hold of me is if you want is through Facebook.
All right. Thank you, George. You can find me on Facebook as Jim Meal, JIMMIEL. And make sure that you have the one that has me in my baseball cap, not the one with snake eyes holding the American flag. That one, as Pat said last episode, is my Cobra site, or because I got hacked. So Zartan is taking my spot on that Facebook profile. So you want the one with me in a baseball cap on Facebook. Also on Facebook, Timbers Toys and Customs, where I try to post some of my customs, some of my events that we're going to be at, and that type of stuff. And also on X as Jim the Joe Junkie. I want to thank everyone at the Longbox Crusade Network for adding G.I. Joe Outpost to their extensive line of shows. Take a listen to all the other shows that are on the Longbox Crusade on any podcatcher or on YouTube. If you like what you hear, go to Patreon and become a Crusader Club member, where you will get all the access. Join us next time, where we will be discussing the vehicles of 1984. Until next time, Yo Joe.
The music themes for this show are done by musical genius Joe November. Please check out his SoundCloud at Josephline99. That's Josephline 99. You will not regret it.
Outtakes. The hazards of recording during the day. Of all the times.
I did hear that. that was just Snake Eyes' Timber,
Yeah, something like that. I'm going to read that last line since Timber ruined that.
The gang, getting rid of that really sounded bad from what I stopped. I should have completed what I was saying and then just said the gang members, but whatever.
Outtakes.
Yeah, definitely an outtake. I hear a cricket. Is that on your end or my end? Okay. Take a pause. I get to watch it ensue.
My end.
Okay. Hey, I told you I'd tell you.
Yep. If you hear it again, let me know.